You.
Okay, thank you so much, Josh. And thank you everyone for being here today for my talk, Dreams Deferred, the Cost of Cybersecurity Education. So a little about me. My name is Jasmine Jackson. I have a master's in computer science from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, a graduate certificate in information security and privacy, also from UNC Charlotte. I'm an adjunct professor at City University of Seattle and Seattle, Washington, and Drexel University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. For this talk, it's through the City University of Seattle. So I want to give thanks to Morgan, Ali, and the rest of my City University of Seattle family for connecting me with this opportunity. And as an adjunct professor, I teach undergraduate and graduate level cybersecurity courses. And I'm also the founder and executive director of the Accelerated Training Program, which I will be talking about a little later in this presentation. So there's a fully packed agenda. Some of the things we will discuss is what is a dream deferred, a push for cyber, what is the cybersecurity pipeline, the types of cybersecurity education, cost of a dream deferred, the accelerated training program, wrap up, and then contact if you want to reach out to me. So what is a dream deferred? It's actually a poem by Langston Hughes titled Harlem. So I'm just going to read it. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? So in this context, we're going to talk about dreams deferred as it relates to cybersecurity and how marginalized groups are being excluded from their dreams of pursuing a career in cybersecurity. So I want to do a quick disclaimer. This presentation is reviewing the nuances of cybersecurity education. It's not meant to demean or put one above the other. It's just looking at the nuances of cybersecurity education and how it relates to marginalized groups. So, cybersecurity, a national problem. So, according to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, there are currently 16 critical infrastructures. I've listed a subset here: chemical, energy, financial services, healthcare, and public health. And each critical infrastructure has at least one breach. So, as the title says, cybersecurity is a national problem. We all need to work in this field to make it better. And I found this really interesting that each of our critical infrastructures have had at least one breach. So that lets us know that there's still a problem and we need to fix that. So a push for cyber. I think it was about maybe a month and a half ago, the White House had the National Cyber Workforce and Education Summit. So this is, there were 4 goals that came out of that summit. The first was build the national cyber workforce. Kind of goes back to the slide that I mentioned about the critical infrastructures and how each of those had at least one breach. We need to build our cyber workforce to where we can handle and mitigate those breaches and potentially have them not happen. Improve skill-based pathways to cyber jobs. So again, cyber is a really hot subject. It's cyber, finding ways to get people to jobs. Educate Americans to have the skills to thrive in an ever-changing digital society. At this point, it's pretty much most people have a digital footprint in some shape or fashion. So whether your cell phone, social media, Instagram, TikTok, I know TikTok ruffles some people's feathers, Twitter, most people have a footprint in this digital society, and improve diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the cyber field. So again, making sure we're getting the right people for the job, no matter what they look like, as far as disabilities or skin color or things of that nature, getting them to the jobs. So what is the cybersecurity pipeline? So I remember, and when I started my cyber career, when I was a teenager, it was a really big push about the digital divide. And the definition is the gap between populations that have access to digital technology and those who do not. So the cybersecurity pipeline is similar in that it's focusing on attracting and retaining talent, and that talent from women and marginalized groups in cybersecurity. And this is very important and needed for the for diverse train of thought. So when most people think of cybersecurity or just the statistics of it now, it's a majority white male in the field. So the cybersecurity pipeline is saying, okay, we need different people in cyber, women, marginalized groups. We need everyone's opinion because, again, cyber is a national issue. We all are affected by it. So some current cybersecurity stats. There's currently a cybersecurity shortage, and that has doubled from 300,000 to 600,000 plus in recent years. 39,000 of that is in the public sector. From another stat from the International Consortium of Minority Cybersecurity Professionals reports that 14% of cybersecurity professionals are women. Now, when you think of that, that's really a small number when women are 51% of the US population. So again, there's a need to have more women in cyber. Also, 3% of information security analysts are African American. So again, that number is low as well. And a survey by ISC Squared found 77% of cybersecurity professionals stated cybersecurity was not offered as part of their educational curriculum. So if we have people who are in the cyber field who feel they weren't adequately prepared because they were like, hey, I didn't even have cyber in my educational program. And it was more so learning on the job. So the different types of cybersecurity education. There's 2-year or community colleges, 4-year colleges and universities, certifications, so such as SANS, Security Plus, AWS, things of that nature. Self-study, so this is where you build a lab and you just go for what you know, and it's like, I'm just going to tinker and learn things that way. You have for-profit colleges and then for-profit training centers and boot camps. And so this is what I'm mainly going to be focused on. And so I have it as for-profit training centers and boot camps because I have seen it used interchangeably. So it's sometimes it's training centers, and then other times I've seen boot camps. So I listed it as both. So the comparison between 2 to 4-year colleges and for-profit training centers. So for each, its students need little to minimal experience. With 2 to 4-year colleges, classes are at a set time, meaning depending on the schedule for that semester, that quarter, your classes might be Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. from 10 to 12. For 2 to 4-year colleges, your classwork is at a steady pace, meaning most times it's easily digestible chunks and it's slow and steady. Program duration is fixed. It's usually 2 to 4 years. And the curriculum is held to a higher rigor, meaning it's reviewed and changes are made. With for-profit training centers, the good thing about, well, the enticing thing about them is classes work around student schedules. So a lot of times with these for-profit training centers, it's they come and they say, hey, Jasmine, I know you are a working adult and you might not be able to go to a traditional college because their classes are during the day. Our classes are at night. We will work around your schedule to get you up and running. Also with for-profit training centers, coursework progresses very rapidly. So it starts off very slow, and then as you progress, the coursework progresses very, very rapidly. With most of these for-profit training centers, promise employment after the program. It's very much a get in and get out type of scenario. It's, hey, you go to this program, our training center for 6 months. At the end of that, we give you the necessary skills to go and get a job. Program duration is shorter. So as I said, usually 6 months to a year, and the curriculum may not be held to a higher rigor. So it's pretty much the curriculum is created, but it might not be reviewed. And it's really up to the for-profit training centers because they're not regulated. So what is the cost of a dream deferred? Monetarily. So for the for-profit training centers, prospective cybersecurity professionals that go down this avenue usually spend 6 months to a year in the program. So as I said before, it's, hey, get in, get out. We're really set on getting you in, getting the necessary skills, and going on your way. Now, with the program being 6 months to 1 year, on average, these prospective cybersecurity professionals are spending $10K in tuition. So to put that in perspective, $10K for a 6-month program, that's a lot of money. And with most of these for-profit training centers, the student takes out private student loans. And they take out the student loans that usually covers the cost of tuition, and they're on their way. And the average loan interest is 10%. That's a lot. That loan interest is a lot. To put that in perspective, as I said in the beginning in the About Me, I have a master's. I received my master's 11 years ago. And even during that time, my interest rate was 7%. And even at that time, to me, that was high. I can't even imagine taking out a loan for a 6 month to 1 year program and the interest rate is at least 10%. That's a lot. In comparison with the 4-year college university, so prospective students that go down this avenue usually spends on average 4 years in college, spends $15K. I put an asterisk. I live in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina. So I use UNC Charlotte's current tuition for in-state only. So of course, if you're out of state, these numbers will be much higher. So spend $15K, and that's for all 4 years for your degree if you're an in-state student, meaning you're from North Carolina and you're going to UNC Charlotte. So I want to make that very clear. Also, these students may receive financial aid, such as grants, things of that nature, and they may take out loans. And I say may take out loans because depending on their financial situation, they either might pay for it out of pocket, they may receive grants, and they do not have to take out student loans. But with the for-profit training centers, they're pushed, and as you will see later, they're pushed to take out these loans. So the inspiration for this talk actually came when I read this article, the Biden department forgives 3.9 billion in student loans for former ITT Tech Institute students. And we're going to delve a little deeper onto why this was forgiven. So the time period was from January 1st, 2005 to September 2016. That's when ITT Tech closed. 208,000 borrowers received 3.9 billion in loan forgiveness. And the reason for this was because the US Education Department, they did a report and they found that ITT Tech engaged in widespread misrepresentation related to students getting a job or transfer credits. And this quote from the US Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona: "It is time for student borrowers to stop shouldering the burden from ITT Tech's years of lies and promises." So just imagine, as a person who wants to better your life, better get into tech, and you're like, okay, I'm going to go to ITT Tech, and then you're shouldered with all of these loans, and it's hard for you to obtain employment. You can't use those credits to transfer to a four-year university. It's like you're pretty much stuck. Also, in that same report, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, found that ITT Tech practiced predatory behaviors in the following ways. So they strongly encourage their students to do private student loan lending, and they pressured the students to take out high-cost private loans, knowing that most students would default on them. So, as it says, it's predatory behavior. I'm having you go and take out these loans, knowing you're going to default and most likely will not find a job. And according to Rohit Chopra, the director of the CFPB, the automatic loan cancellation announced will provide life-changing relief that has been long owed to former ITT Tech students. So again, imagine taking out these exorbitant amount of loans, whether it's the amount, the loan interest, and you're doing this for a better life. And then you take out these loans, you do not find a job, and you still have to pay these loans back, and it's a burden to do so. So a cost, that the original cost that I showed was a monetary one. So the cost from the cybersecurity pipeline, a high number of marginalized groups are enrolling in these for-profit training centers. And so again, students only know what they know at the time of enrollment. And I keep emphasizing this. It's more so, I'm trying to get a better life. I see this program, this training center, they're telling me it would take 6 months to a year. I could get up and running. I could get a job. I can, change my life circumstances. I'm saying that because a lot of times it's, well, why didn't the prospective student, why didn't they go anywhere else? And it's like, well, you only know what you know at the time. A lot of these students believe this is their pathway to get into cyber and to get into IT. So it's like, as I said, oh, great, I can do a 6-month to 1-year program, get up and running, get into this career field and change my life. So I have personally had 4 prospective cybersecurity professionals in the last 3 months reach out to me. One of them being my uncle, reached out to me and he was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this training center program. He's in Tennessee and he was describing it and he was like, yeah, the program is $7,000 and it's for like Security Plus, CISA, CYSA, pretty much all of the CompTIA certifications. And like, I immediately stopped him and was like, no, do not do this. It's like, you can do these certs on your own for far less money. And he was like, yeah, it kind of gave me a weird feeling when I was at the training center and they were describing it. So he was the only one who did not go through with it. The other three that I encountered enrolled in these for-profit training centers. And what I have found is that students are not finishing these programs. One is because the coursework is too strenuous, because again, a lot of times it's like, hey, you don't need experience. We'll train you to get the students into their program. And then it's when the students are in, and as the work accelerates, the students are completely caught off guard. And it's like, hey, I can't keep up because this is my first time being exposed to this material. So the students will usually have to spend many hours outside of class trying to put pieces together. More often than not, the students are just not completing the program. And this is a cost to the cybersecurity pipeline, again, because we're trying to get and retain talent from women in marginalized groups. This is a cost to the cybersecurity pipeline because we're losing and retaining cybersecurity talent from diverse backgrounds. So by having these prospective professionals go to these for-profit training centers, not completing the program, a lot of them are disenfranchised. And it's like, you know what, I don't even want to do cyber. I'm just going to pick another field altogether, which again is having us in the field losing and retaining and not retaining talent. So a dream almost deferred. So I'm very passionate about this because it almost happened to me. So I mentioned a little bit when talking about the digital slide about how in the late 90s, I worked at a nonprofit. The nonprofit was Access to Software for All People. Even though I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, I'm originally from the Bay Area. I'm from Berkeley, California. So this nonprofit was in Berkeley, California. And so it was created to expose inner city kids to information technology and to also close the digital divide. So I worked at this nonprofit, ASAP, throughout high school. And it's actually funny because they closed the day after I graduated. And so after graduation, I was like the people that I described. I was like, okay, I don't have a job. I'm seeing commercials about, at this time, it was DeVry University. And it was, you could come to DeVry. Our program is a year. We'll train you up and you'll get a job. And so I almost enrolled in DeVry University. And I remember I spoke with my mentor at the time. And I was telling her, and I was like, hey, I'm going to enroll at DeVry. I'm seeing these commercials. It will take me a year. I'll get into the IT field and continue on. And she was like, no, do not do that. She was like, go to community college, go from there. And I'm like, why? Why would you tell me that? I'm like, I'm looking at this. It's just a year of my life. It's going to go by so fast and then I can move on. And she's like, no, trust me, just go to community college. And I did. I went to community college, transferred to a 4-year, graduated, received my master's, went to grad school, received my master's. But I say that to say, if I did enroll in DeVry University, my life path would have been so much different. And I probably wouldn't be in front of you today giving this presentation. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about DeVry University. So DeVry University, 1,800 former students will receive or have received approximately 71.7 million in defensive discharges. And that is because the Department of Education found that the institution made widespread, substantial misrepresentation about its job placement rates. So remember I said, I used to watch the commercials of DeVry. This is 20 years ago. And so DeVry claimed 90% of graduates who actively seek employment obtain jobs in their field within 6 months of graduation. So that enticed me. So I was like, okay, I can do this program for a year. And if I network really hard within 6 months, I'll have a job, because it's like 9 out of 10 people find jobs. The Department of Education found that actually the job placement was 58%. So it wasn't the 90 that DeVry claimed. DeVry also had a national advertising campaign, "We major in careers," with the brand of Career Placement University. So it's like, hey, we major in careers, you come here, it's almost like a sure thing. 90% of our students find jobs. Why would you not want to go here? The US Department of Education also found that half of the jobs in the 90% placement rate that DeVry was using were held by students who obtained those jobs before graduating from DeVry, and often before they enrolled. So it was a lot of times these students already had these jobs before enrolling into DeVry. So DeVry education was not attributed to these students obtaining employment. You couldn't use DeVry education because for most of them, they had the jobs before enrolling, or they probably had the necessary skills before doing DeVry. Two interesting things to note is that when doing their 90% placement rate calculation, DeVry excluded students who did not conduct job searches in the manner the university's career services preferred. So for instance, if the career services was like, you need to do steps A, B, C, and I do steps X, Y, Z, I would not be counted in their calculation because I didn't look for a job in the manner that the career services preferred. And as most, if not all of you know, there are many different ways to obtain employment. There's not one linear way to do that. So I found that to be interesting. Senior executives knew the 90% statistic was false. So senior executives at DeVry knew it was false because alumni was sending letters and they're like, hey, it's been 8 months and I still have not found employment. And per your placement rate, 90% of students found employment in 6 months. I'm doing everything that you told me to do, and yet I still have not found employment. So the senior executives knew that percentage was, that statistic was false, but they still was using it. So I'm going to do a cybersecurity pipeline example, a potential one, from one of the 4 people that I mentioned in a previous slide. So I had a prospective cybersecurity professional reach out to me on Instagram about 2 months ago. And they sent me this long story, and they were like, hey, I heard you on a podcast explaining about the cybersecurity pipeline, how we need diverse train of thought, how we need, a better representation for cyber. And I'm in this for-profit training center program. The program is currently 6 months. And so I remember I emailed the person back and they were in North Carolina. And I was like, hey, let's set up a Zoom because I'm like, I have way more questions and I can't do this on Instagram. I'm going to need to talk to you. You're going to have to tell me everything. But when reading their story, it reminded me of myself and the DeVry, almost the DeVry incident for me, but for them, they actually enrolled into the training center program. And I was like, hey, I need to know more. So when I spoke with this person, they told me they actually took out a personalized private loan. As I said, the program is 12 months. The loan is, their tuition was $12K. Their interest rate is 13%, and it's for 10 years. So as soon as I heard that, I was flabbergasted because, again, as I mentioned, I have a master's and even my interest rate was not that high. And so automatically I was like, this feels predatory to me. And so um, the student, they continued on and they're like, I don't know what to do. I was referred to this training center by a relative of mine. And, they told me to, stick it out and I'll find employment. And they're like, I'm overwhelmed because the material is accelerating at a rapid pace. They're like, hey, I really don't have experience as in cyber. They were a Lyft driver. So they're like, hey, I'm currently a Lyft driver. I'm seeing all of these commercials and articles and everything about cyber, how it's a hot field. I want to get in, I want to learn, I want to improve my life, right? And so they told me when they initially went to enroll at the training center, they were told the program was for beginners. It was like, oh yeah, because they explained, hey, I'm a Lyft driver. I don't have, my experience in cyber is very limited, right? And the training was like, oh yeah, that's fine. You could just come in and we'll teach you, right? Our program is for beginners, and it wasn't. They told me that the training center did have a career center, but it was lacking because I was like, okay, have you spoke with the training center? Like, do they work with local jobs, companies? Like, how are you supposed to obtain employment? And they're like, well, there's a training center, but it's lacking. Lacking as in they were open like really weird hours and things of that nature. So during the 3-hour conversation that I spoke with this person, I just started to pour into everything that I have learned. And it was like, okay, you're in this program. You need to create an online portfolio. It was something that I use as well. It's a great tool to obtain employment in cyber because I told them, use your homework assignments, create that into blog posts or YouTube videos. So when you go into job interviews, you can say, hey, I don't have formal experience as in from a job, but I am doing classes. Here's what I learned. I have these blog posts. I have these YouTube videos. I also gave them pointers on how to network. So social media, meetups, these are all of the things that I have used to obtain employment in cyber. And I remember when I spoke with that person, they were like, wow, this was really helpful because they were like, this training program didn't tell me any of this, like an online portfolio, how to network. It was just pretty much, here's the coursework, you do it and you get out. But it wasn't a lot of nurturing. And I found that to be very sad, especially when you're paying $12,000 with a 13% interest rate. So to me, that was very sad. So how can we change this, right? So I talked about for-profit training centers, a little bit about comparing them to 2-year and 4-year colleges, but how can we change this so we can have people not go down this path? Well, one such solution is evangelize cybersecurity education. So at the elementary and middle school level, high school level, colleges and universities, non-traditional students. So in my mind, these are people who are not in any type of school at all, and or veterans, right? So I remember I went to the NICE conference in Atlanta in June. And what I found really interesting was one of the keynote speakers was discussing how they're actually looking at middle school, right, to start evangelizing cybersecurity education. And I was like, oh, wow, I never really thought of that because we need to get these students early and get them exposed to cyber so we can retain them, right? And I was like, oh, wow, that's a neat idea. But yes, we need to evangelize cybersecurity education, right? Evangelize it in all aspects, in all different sectors, in all areas. And also, we need to create more apprenticeship opportunities. So It's one thing to just be like, hey, yeah, we have cybersecurity education. It's another to be like, here's cybersecurity education, and here's an apprenticeship program where we're going to set you up for success to learn. So that leads me into my nonprofit, the Accelerated Training Program. And that is a nonprofit that is focused on exposing all facets of cybersecurity to marginalized groups and such areas such as web exploitation, reverse engineering, binary exploitation, forensics, and cryptography. And the mission statement, the Accelerated Training Program mission statement is quality cybersecurity education should be accessible to everyone. And I remember in my collegiate career, I really wasn't exposed to reverse engineering and binary exploitation. Those were things that categories that I learned on my own. And I'm very much still a beginner. But again, cyber is a national issue. And there are 16 critical infrastructures. And to actively combat that, to have diverse populations that knows a range of cybersecurity topics, right? So again, quality cybersecurity education should be accessible to everyone. Quality as in the student who's, or an accelerator, what they're called in the nonprofit, the accelerator, when they complete the program, they can either continue on with their studies in one or more areas, or they can use their skills to obtain employment. So a little more about the Accelerated Training Program. We created challenges for the Biohacking Village, which is a really good, biohacking is really good. It looks at cybersecurity and medical, the intersection of those two entities. Created challenges for that CTF at DEF CON last month. So in the following areas of web exploitation, reverse engineering, binary exploitation, networking, cryptography, and forensics. And so some of the stats from that were 279 people participated in the CTF. A little bit about DEF CON. DEF CON is distributed amongst multiple locations, and a village is a category in cybersecurity. So the Biohacking Village is just one village. There's other villages such as the Red Team Village, more so offensive, Blue Team Village, which is more defensive. There's other villages such as payment, cloud, so voting, aerospace. Is really cool. So any area that cyber touches most likely is a village at DEF CON. And DEF CON is in Las Vegas. So for the Biohacking Village CTF, the challenges were distributed at DEF CON because there's a large distribution of experience, meaning there were some people who were absolute beginners, and then there were others who were experienced players. So it was very interesting to see how each group will line up with the challenges created. So most solved challenges was a web exploitation, and it was more so viewing source, and the flag was there. Another was a crypto challenge, a Caesar cipher, which is pretty common when you talk about cryptography. It was a little twist. Most times it's like a rotation of 13. I think I did like, we did a rotation of 30 because it was DEF CON's 30-year anniversary. Least solved challenges was cryptography, the RSA cipher, and then the Stego challenge. Those two were the least solved. So I really wasn't surprised with crypto because that's usually a hit or miss. But then the Stego, I was like, that's kind of interesting. So upcoming events for the Accelerated Training Program, our official preliminary launch is tentatively scheduled for January of 2023. Application and registration details will soon follow. This focus right now will mostly be on college-age students. And so with the training program is kinesthetic learning. So I'm a kinesthetic learner. I learn by doing. I need to put fingers to keyboard. So, and again, that's the philosophy of the accelerated training program is that's the best way to learn, is to learn by doing. It's also a cohort style, meaning smaller cohorts. So again, we don't want any of the accelerators to be lost in the shuffle. So you learn by doing with smaller groups, and everyone helps each other, right? So that's how it's set up. And so the wrap up, cybersecurity, the cybersecurity shortage is a national issue. So much so that the White House had their first annual National Cyber Workforce and Education Summit a few months ago to address this. With the increased need for cybersecurity jobs, we need to find a better way to evangelize cybersecurity education and training. Also need to create more apprenticeship opportunities for prospective cybersecurity professionals. One such example is the accelerated training program. And there are others out there as well. And let's not defer any more dreams, right? So let's not repeat the mistakes of ITT Tech and DeVry. It's very important to evangelize cybersecurity and lead people on a pathway to success. It's not leading people into a situation where they feel trapped, defeated, disenfranchised, and they do not want to continue on. Because having these prospective cybersecurity professionals go to these for-profit training centers is removing marginalized groups from the cybersecurity pipeline, because there's a large number of them going to these training centers. And it's removing them from the pipeline because they're not adequately prepared. A lot of these training centers are saying, hey, yeah, we'll train you. And then they get in the program and they're like, this is too much. I've never been exposed to this. I don't know what to do. Students are dropping out of the program because they're feeling overwhelmed. Students are saddled with debt. So it's, again, with most of these training centers, it's you take out private loans. So it's like you're taking out these loans, you don't complete these programs, but you still have this debt to pay back, right? So now your situation may have started as bad. Now it's gone to worse because now you have this debt on top of you. And students are not finding jobs in cybersecurity. So we're not retaining talent. So again, let's not defer any more dreams. Let's really help prospective cybersecurity professionals find a better way to get into cyber, and let's keep them in cyber. So if you want to contact me, I have my email, jacksonjasmine@cdu.edu. If you want to know more information about the accelerated training program, our website is https://tatp.org. And if you want to reach out to me, my handle is the Fluffy007 on all socials. So Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So are there any questions? Can everyone hear me? Okay, I think. Okay. Okay. Are there any questions? The accelerated training program is right now, it's in the, what do you mean by geographies? What do you mean by that, Jamie? I just want to make sure I answer your question correctly.
Are you,
yes.
I can ask this way, that'll help.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it's kinesthetic hands-on. So is that, I guess it kind of goes to, is it virtual based or is it meant to be on-site?
It's virtual. It's virtual.
Okay, so that kind of makes the geographies a little less restrictive, but are you
Yeah.
looking for students only in the United States, students internationally?
Right now, only in the United States, but the plan is to open international. But right now, it's only in the United States. I kind of figured that was where the question was going, but I wanted to make sure. Yes, let me do the website again. And yes, Jessica, we are looking for educational partners. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. Yes. Okay, I'm kind of hearing an echo, so please put yourselves on mute. But yes, the program, the accelerated training program is virtual because it's more so trying to get people in one room, especially in COVID, getting out of the pandemic, trying to find a time that works for everyone really can cause a lot of unnecessary heartache. Also, with the accelerated training program, classes will be recorded. So, for instance, let's just say you miss a class, right? Because life happens. The class will be recorded. You can review the course material and continue on. So, yes, thank you for that question.
One more thing related.
Yes.
Is your goal here for this to be like a one and done for the students, or is this kind of meant to be a feeder for them to then continuing on to higher ed, et cetera?
It really depends on the student. I leave that more so up to them. It could be a one or done where they're like, hey, I gained employment. Or it could be, I'm really interested in this and I want to pursue this as more in higher ed. The accelerated training program doesn't make that decision for the students. That's up to them. And that's an individual decision. You mentioned interest in college student. Does that include? Yes. So college, anyone, any student that's enrolled in a college or university, it's not age restricted at all. And that was another thing, just to touch on Sarah's point. Also, some training is like age restricted. I didn't want to do that because of that very situation of students, and I like to call them non-traditional, where it's like might have started college, life happened, or maybe as later in life is like, hey, I want to obtain higher education, right? And I don't want to. The accelerated training program doesn't want to restrict them. It's my personal philosophy is you're never too old to learn, right? You're always learning something every day. So we don't want to restrict people on age. It's if you have a desire to learn, we welcome you. Okay.
Are there any final questions for Jasmine? All right. Well, Jasmine, I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for joining and presenting for us. I think everybody can agree that this is a very informative session.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh. I can share my slides. Do you just want me to email them to you to share it, or how does that work?
Yeah, you can just email them to me.
Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone, for coming and listening to my talk. You could have been anywhere, but you were here, and I greatly, greatly appreciate you for that. Thank you so much, and have a good day.